Hey, welcome back to Weenie Trades. I'm Weenie, and I'm going to break down these stocks over here on the left for you. So let's get right into the video. First up, we've got SQ. And Square today, a little bit choppy as you look at the intraday time frame. Look, zigzag, zigzag, zigzag. We're either going to break to the upside or to the downside. When you have the opportunity to break out and you don't, it kind of leaves me a little bit more bearish short term on Square. So Square, short term, I'm leaning a little bit bearish just based off the price action today. So for example, on the daily time frame, because of this, we're starting to form a bear flag now. We should have dug a little bit higher. And so generally we have a flag pull down. Now we're kind of zigzagging a bit. We're trapped in this consolidation range. Generally, when you look at this bear flag, we can duplicate it, and that could put SQ down in the lower 220s. So that's something to think about on the SQ short term. But long term, I am still a bull on SQ. It just means short term might just be get hammered. Otherwise, SQ needs to close, I'd say weekly, above 265 for there to be a chance to have an all-time high breakout this year. Otherwise, SQ could just be consolidating for a very, very long time. Next up we've got is NVIDIA. And NVIDIA, on the weekly time frame, if you guys remember, I'm just going to clear this drawing set. We talked about this former breakout area. Do you see that? Top 1, 207, sells off. Top again, 207.36, sells off. We come to it from the top side. So far, that is holding as support. Now, again, NVIDIA was very, very choppy today. I tried to grab the dip on NVIDIA today at about 212.50. Had to take the stop loss underneath the lows. That's okay. It's just a little bit choppy. Just need to come down just a little bit more. Anyways, NVIDIA, if you remember yesterday's video, I was saying not likely to break above this 214 today. So far, we've respected that. However, we are starting to put in higher lows into that. So we could be breaking out on NVIDIA. However, you wouldn't want to chase the breakout. And why not? Because there's a lot of resistance that we just created along the way. So in an extreme bull case, NVIDIA could continue this uptrend and go as high as about 218. Otherwise, there's a gap to fill at 219.37. So that's for the top side on NVIDIA, and you should expect a drop from that level, or at least some sort of reaction. It doesn't have to just sell off and die and go to zero, but you should expect just a little bit of a pullback on NVIDIA in front of that 220, let's call it. So NVIDIA still kind of potentially could reverse the trend. Otherwise, if it can hold and pull back slightly and start to zigzag up, it might just need to consolidate, and then it can break all-time highs. Otherwise, NVIDIA bearish if it reclaims that 207 support. That could mean a further breakdown. The next support after that would be 201, 202, maybe a spike of 200. That tends to happen a lot. And then we'll have to reevaluate at that point in time. Next up we've got is BIDU. And BIDU, kind of like Square and NVIDIA, kind of fiddled with me today. Again, we got the great move higher. I go long BIDU just at about 157. Tries to push higher. Again, look at this nasty just consolidation. Broke bearish, but weekly. That's why I stopped out of BIDU. And again, BIDU, really just choppy, not a lot of follow through. If BIDU gets some legs and it is the potential buy the fear type of trade, BIDU could push as high as 161.30, and that just represents this consolidation and this gap. Again, I wouldn't be expecting any huge breakouts on BIDU, as a lot of investors might be looking to dump their bags from not stopping out a long time ago. So that's just something to think about BIDU. Otherwise, slightly bearish underneath this 155 support. And we could drift on lower. BIDU, though, so far it just looks like it wants to just go sideways to slightly lower and not break out. Unless, of course, the SPY wants to break out. And SPY, really, really just choppy on the day, all over the place. If we look at the hourly time frame, got really oversold, had an overnight bounce, and we spent all day consolidating. So if SPY gets a good rebound rally, look for resistance in the 441s area. Otherwise, if SPY's breaking down, it could be breaking down probably underneath, today's low, 433.30, but probably a better breakdown point might be underneath that 431 level. Next up we've got is AMD, and AMD, I was looking for the dip buy at about 95. AMD went as low as 99, so probably a lot of people were thinking, I'd love to buy AMD. Any price under 100 again is a great deal. Those that bought AMD just under 100, now $3 in the money. So a little over 3% on their money so far. Nice, good move. But short term, I'm just going to clear this drawing set. Short term, AMD has resistance at 103.85. So 103.85, that's the gap to be filled. If it closes daily above the gap, I love using gaps as reference points because it actually works a lot of the time, at least for me. When we close important candles above gaps, I tend to find that that trend tends to continue. So for example, if AMD closes the day above 104, that could be bullish and continue to the upside. Hourly helps a lot. The longer it's above that price level, it tends to continue higher. It's not a hard cut rule, just like everything else, but that's just something to think about. Otherwise, if you're beneath the gap and still closing hourly or daily beneath that gap, it still is balls in the bears camp. So AMD could still see that lower low down to the 95. It doesn't have to, but I'm going to be using that gap as a reference point on AMD. Otherwise, I'd love the dip buy at about 95, maybe 94, and then just kind of risk off of underneath 90 off of that level. But AMD, like it on a lower low breakdown. But otherwise, if you're aggressive, you could go with the breakout over that 104. Time will tell on AMD. Next up, we've got is Moderna. And Moderna kind of just consolidating. I was asked to break down Moderna on the stream one time, and I was just like, it could see the new highs, but I don't see it breaking down. And we've just kind of been in that range. We've been above that 400, but we've been well beneath that 460. And here we are hanging out at 437. On the intraday time frame, we had a really, really great channel over here. So higher highs and higher lows. Higher highs, higher lows. Buyers are buying the low points on the channel. Sellers are selling the high points on the channel. What's a hint when this channel ends is, did we just start to put in a lower high? So left shoulder, head, potential right shoulder. The psychology behind the head and shoulders is more important than the actual pattern itself. It could be potentially rounding on the intraday time frame. So Moderna, if it can hold above that 440, there's still a lot of resistance at this breakdown candle area. So Moderna, short term is bullish as long as it can hold that 432, and that comes from this pivot and sell off right there. If we can hold above it, great. Moderna, bullish. So 430 is kind of your reference point. Bullish above, bearish beneath. Otherwise, still just choppy. It's still in a sideways range until it's not. So watch that eventual 400. That's going to be a key level. And certainly this low wick here at 407. If that starts to break down, you could see 400 real quick. Next up we've got is DraftKings, DKNG. And DraftKings got clapped today. Had a really good morning pump, then dump. Jeez, in the pre-market hit 60, moved higher. All day, trend day to the downside. Had a great recovery up to the previous breakdown area. So we break down underneath 55.50, sell off, bear flag drop, bear flag drop. V bottom, straight pullback into resistance. Now just kind of chopping around, flopping around. DraftKings, I would lean more bearish than bullish. However, you're going to want to wait for 53. So bears are starting to win more and more if 53 is breaking to the downside. But where's this previous breakdown area? 55. So if the bulls can hold consistently above 55, then sure, it has a chance to go higher. I'd be leaning sideways to slightly bearish on DraftKings moving forward. If we look at the daily time frame is getting interesting because it's oversold into a support zone. Big volume candle. DraftKings will be interesting to see in the coming future. If we look at the weekly time frame, looks like our weekly lower high is set right at this current level. Do you see that? Big pullback from the 65, and that has proved resistance weeks and weeks later. All the way back in late 2020, this has been a resistance, 65 for DraftKings. So we'll see if that resistance holds up. Again, neutral / slightly bearish on DraftKings moving forward. Next up we've got is Google. And Google, I had in my notebook today, Google, buy Google calls, Google shares at 27.69 today. 27.69. What was the low of day? 27.67. And that represents this bold green line. Did I follow that plan? Yes and no. I bought shares at this breakout because I'd rather have Google than not. Got a small partial, but Google went and tagged the stop. I dip buy at that price level with a call option, and I just take a quick $200 off of that support level. But had I held the call option to the plan, it says Google take profits at 2,800, 2,810, I'd have $2,000 of profit. So plan versus what I feel, that's an important lesson on trading the plan. Anyways, Google, very important market indicator. It's a pretty big weighting in the overall tech sector. So Google, we could be doing a rollover formation. It looks like a rounding, slow type of top. And I'm not calling a top on Google. I hope it's not a top on Google. I don't really care if it is or isn't. I'm only in shares and leap call spreads that expire 3 years from now on Google. But essentially, Google, if it gets going, again, watch the gap. Use the gap as a reference point. 28.15 is that gap. If we're beneath it, the ball is still technically in the bear's court. If we can hold and close daily above that 28.15, I do think that Google can probably just chop around underneath something like 28.50. I do not expect Google to break out or see all-time highs anytime soon. However, we will see what the market wants to do. The market is still just choppy, flopping around, but very interesting move from Google off of the dip buy. Otherwise, Google, bearish on Google. If we're underneath 27.50, you would not want to see Google coming underneath the midpoint of yesterday's bearish day. You wouldn't want it to be underneath that midpoint of that range. At least that's how I see it in my eyes. Next up, we've got is DOKU, DOCU. And DocuSign, yeah, it had many opportunities to break out and then failed. Double bottom right here, potentially. I'd be a little bit more bearish Doku, expect this to zigzag and probably drift into the 250s. There's a lot of open space here, and just market symmetry says, yeah, more likely to do that. Other than that, I'm not going to go too crazy on the technicals. Big extended move to the downside, weak bounce, indecisive yesterday, inside bar today. If we break the inside bar bearish, look lower. Break the inside bar bullish, look a little bit higher. Watch out for these retracement resistance at 285. Otherwise, 250 might be where 235 is potentially the dip buy, if you ask me, but probably going to trickle on lower to 250. Anything can happen, though. I'm just looking at the chart. Next up, we've got is SDC. And I've broken down SDC earlier, so I'm not going to go too long on SDC. Today I had a doji day, and we talked about the inside bar. My support level was 617, and I was saying not likely to break the high of the day. We have not broken the high of the day, 6.67. Now it looks like it put in a higher low pivot at 6.36. If this pivot holds at 6.36, SDC could actually squeeze yet again. And if it's beneath the 6.36, no dice. I feel like that's an important reference point based off how long we spent at this level. We broke above it, and now it's held the support. That needs to continue to hold the support. So that's SDC. In terms of the daily chart, still resistance trending at about 6.92. So you wouldn't expect it to blow past 7 if it holds this support level. Otherwise, there's another support down on SDC at about 5.83. Next up we've got is AMC. AMC still rolling over. AMC slowly trickling into potential support. I bet AMC probably goes sideways from this level because we just ran into support. Again, false breakout on the ascending triangle, could not hold lower high. Right there, the bears that shorted that lower high at 50 did very well. The bulls that bought this breakout over here did very well as well. So the bulls that bought the 35 breakout did well. The bears that shorted the lower high did well. Now we're just at support, but I wouldn't expect support to get a big bounce due to market conditions increasing with their volatility. I wonder if the meme stocks are going to survive this time around. We'll see, but I'm leaning sideways. I'm leaning just neutral to slightly bearish on AMC. Not expecting a dump, not expecting a rollover, but certainly not expecting the squeeze. Lastly, we've got HLBZ. Beautiful pennant in the morning. They announced that they're partnering with Amazon. That's going to be a big gap up. Gapping up over 120%. It was dead yesterday, if you guys remember. We traded this on Friday and did very well trading it. Yesterday, gap down. Today, another shock gap. So it's a kind of a gap and go. Gets halted to the upside. Remember, once everybody's attention's on it, that's at the halt price. They usually can signal a potential top. I was looking for a dip buy today on it at 25.59. Just didn't get it. That's okay. Anyways, lower highs. Are we going to hold higher lows? It's tricky to say, but HLBZ, I would say it's bullish if it can hold consistently above 35. But otherwise, it is bearish if it starts to break down underneath that 25. So 25 was the prior former breakout area from Friday's action. So if it can hold that as support, could be good to go to the upside. So that is HLBZ. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We covered a lot of tickers today, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye. And Peter says, check out the course. Bye-bye.